We are the first generation in human history to outsource our minds. You don't own your memories anymore. You don't own your sense of direction. The internet isn't a tool you use. It's a life support system for your brain. And tonight, the cord is being cut. Forever. Imagine a silent world. Not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence of the void where your second brain used to live. Most of us don't realize it, but we no longer live in just one world. We live in a hybrid reality, part flesh and bone, part fiber-optic cable. We have woven our nervous systems into the global grid so tightly that we can no longer tell where the synapse ends and the silicon begins. If the internet disappeared tomorrow, the first thing you would feel isn't boredom. It's a physical sensation of loss. Like a phantom limb, screaming for a body part that is no longer there, reaching for a connection that has been cauterized. For the last 20 years, we have undergone a process called cognitive offloading. It was marketed as efficiency, but it was actually a slow-motion surrender of the self. Why remember a phone number, a date, or a historical fact when a glass rectangle in your pocket remembers it for you? We have outsourced our long-term memory to the cloud. We have handed over the keys to our intellect to a series of algorithms that prioritize the next hit over the deep truth. When that connection severs, your hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and spatial navigation, suddenly finds itself standing in an empty library. The shelves are there, but the books have turned to dust. The hyperlinks in your mind lead to 404 errors written in your own neural pathways. You are a scholar in a world where the ink has vanished from every page. In the first 24 hours, the amygdala takes over. This is the brain's primal alarm system, the ancient lookout that kept our ancestors alive in the tall grass. Without the constant, rhythmic stream of dopamine hits from notifications, your brain enters a state of clinical withdrawal. Cortisol levels spike, your heart rate climbs, you feel a sense of profound isolation, even if you are standing in a crowded room surrounded by people who love you. Because for the modern human, being alone used to mean you were still connected to everyone via a digital thread. Now, that thread is cut. You are truly, terrifyingly, alone in the private theater of your own skull. The Google effect is a real neurological phenomenon. We don't remember information anymore. We only remember where to find it. We have become a species of indexers. We are masters of the search bar, but servants to the source. Without the where, your internal map of the world collapses into static. Think about your spatial awareness. Before the satellite, humans possessed an internal compass. We mapped the world through landmarks, through the smell of the air, through the position of the sun. We carry the world inside us. Now, we follow a blue dot on a glowing screen. We don't look at the road. We look at the representation of the road. If that dot disappears, we aren't just lost. We are cognitively paralyzed. Our brains have pruned the neural pathways required for navigation because the algorithm made them redundant. This is the price of efficiency. We have traded our internal capabilities for external convenience. We have become a species of glass lookers. And when the glass turns black, we lose the ability to see the world at all. Your brain is currently wired to expect a reward every few seconds. The scroll, the like, the refresh. This is the dopamine loop. When the loop breaks, the brain experiences a crash similar to chemical addiction. Irritability, anxiety, a crushing sense of purposelessness. The silence isn't peaceful, it's deafening. It is a roar of static where the feed used to be. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus and decision-making, starts to glitch. It's searching for a signal that isn't coming. It's screaming for a distraction that no longer exists. We have built a digital heaven, only to realize we've built a biological prison. We are nodes in a massive global neural network. And tonight, the network has gone dark. The lights are out. And for the first time in your life, you are forced to listen to the sound of your own heartbeat. It is the sound of a machine that has forgotten how to run without a master. Everything you think you know is stored on a server that is currently cooling into a hunk of useless metal. Your history, your photos, your identity, they weren't yours. They were rented, and the lease just expired. Welcome back to the physical world. It's much colder than you remember. What happens when the external brain is ripped away? Biologically, we begin to revert. Our brains are governed by a principle called neuroplasticity. The brain is like a muscle. It strengthens the pathways we use, and it withers the ones we don't. For over a decade, you have strengthened the rapid switching pathway. You have trained your brain to process thousands of microbits of information per hour, scanning headlines, swiping through faces, jumping from a tragedy in one tab to a comedy in the next, never pausing, never lingering. But you have lost the ability to process one single thing for a long time. Without the internet, the constant partial attention that defines our era becomes an agonizing burden. Your brain is still revving at 10,000 RPM, but there is no fuel, no new data, no new outrage, no new validation. In the first week, the digital withdrawal manifests as physical symptoms, disrupted sleep patterns, a heavy, aching pressure behind the eyes, where the blue light used to stimulate the optic nerve until 3 in the morning. And then there is the phantom vibration syndrome. You feel your leg twitch, a sharp, distinct buzz against your thigh. You reach for your pocket, but it's empty. Your brain is hallucinating a notification because it cannot accept the silence. This isn't just a habit. It is a neurological scar. Your brain has been physically rewired to seek out the novelty bias. We are hunters and gatherers of information. In the wild, a new sound or a new sight could mean survival. A predator in the brush or a fruit tree in the distance. Online, a new notification triggers that same ancient survival instinct. But now, the forest is empty, the trees are silent, and your hunting instincts are turning inward, eating away at your peace of mind, searching for a target that isn't there. This is where the psychological breakdown begins. We have spent years curating a digital self, a version of us that exists only in the pixels, polished, edited, and admired by strangers we will never meet. Without the internet, that person dies. If there is no one to watch you, do you still exist? If there is no record of your dinner, your vacation, or your thoughts, did they actually happen? Our sense of self has become externalized. We rely on the mirror of the web to tell us who we are, based on the cold metrics of others. When the mirror breaks, we are left with a reflection we haven't looked at in a long time. The raw, unedited, messy version of ourselves. The version that doesn't have a filter. The version that has to deal with the quiet, without a soundtrack, without a scroll. Furthermore, our perception of time begins to distort. On the internet, time is compressed. We can see the history of the world in a minute, and the news of the day in a second. Without it, time stretches into a vast, unrecognizable landscape. An hour feels like a day. An afternoon feels like an eternity. The boredom threshold of the modern human is incredibly low. We have forgotten how to wait. We have forgotten how to ponder. We have forgotten how to let a thought sit in our minds without immediately trying to share it or solve it with a search engine. We are entering a period of cognitive loneliness. The data starvation has begun, and the brain, in its desperation, will start to hallucinate the connection it craves. You find yourself reaching for a device that isn't there 20, 30, 50 times a day. Every time you hit the empty pocket, your brain registers a micro-trauma, a reminder that you are disconnected from the hive mind. The social feedback loop is broken. The validation machine is out of order. You are forced to face the reality of the skull. Small, dark, and suddenly very quiet. Your inner monologue, which has been suppressed by a decade of podcasts and music and social feeds, begins to grow louder. It is a voice you don't recognize. It is the voice of a stranger who has been living in your head, waiting for the noise to stop. The withdrawal isn't just mental, it's chemical. Your synapses are screaming for the hit, the blue light, the scroll, the red dot. But the screen is cold, the grid is dead, and you are finally beginning to realize that the person you thought you were was just a collection of data points on a server that no longer exists. You aren't a user anymore. You are a biological organism trapped in a silent room, rediscovering what it means to be alive without a signal. You are a ghost in a machine that has been unplugged, and the silence is just beginning. Look at your hands. They are shaking, not because you are cold, but because they have nothing to hold on to. The world is real again, and reality is the most painful withdrawal of all. But then, after the panic, after the week of withdrawal, something miraculous begins to happen. The brain is a master of adaptation. After the initial 48 hours of chaos, after the phantom vibrations finally stop, your brain begins to drift into a state it hasn't visited since you were a child. Without the digital noise, the default mode network of your brain starts to wake up from a long, artificial slumber. This is the circuit responsible for daydreaming, self-reflection, and deep creativity. In a connected world, we kill boredom the second it appears. But boredom is the soil where original thought grows. Without a screen to fill the gaps, your brain is forced to entertain itself. Neural pathways that have been dormant for a decade begin to spark. You start to notice things you haven't seen in years. The texture of the wall, the rhythm of your own breathing, the way the light changes in the afternoon as it crawls across the floor. Your attention span, which has been sliced into 30-second intervals by short-form algorithms, begins to stretch. It becomes linear again. You move from scanning to reading, from reacting to observing. This is the return of the analog mind. Without the digital noise, your brain starts to reprioritize local information. The people in the room with you become high definition again. You start to pick up on micro expressions that you used to miss because you were looking at your lap, checking a notification that didn't matter. Your empathy, which has been dulled by the distance of a screen and the anonymity of the comments section, begins to sharpen. You are forced to deal with the physical reality of the other. Your brain begins to perform a system cleanup. The Google effect starts to reverse. Since you can no longer look it up, your brain realizes it must store it. your long-term memory systems begin to engage more deeply. The things you learn, the stories you hear, they stick. They become part of your internal architecture rather than just a tab open in a browser. We begin to see the return of linear thinking. Modern life is a series of hyperlinks. We jump from one topic to another without ever finishing a thought, a constant state of mental fragmentation. But in the disconnected world, thoughts have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You find yourself finishing a book, page by page, feeling the weight of the paper. You find yourself finishing a conversation, hearing the nuances in the voice. You find yourself finishing a dream. The frantic, jagged energy of the internet age begins to smooth out into a calm, steady pulse. The digital fog lifts. You're no longer a passenger in an algorithm's car, being driven toward a destination you didn't choose. You are the driver again. But being the driver means you have to face the road ahead, and the road is often lonely. You start to ask questions you haven't asked in years. Not what is trending, but what is true? Your brain is beginning to reclaim its territory. The neural real estate that was once occupied by likes and retweets and feeds is being repurposed. You are building a fortress inside your own head, a place where thoughts can live without being monitored, a place where ideas can grow without being harvested for data. You are discovering that the boredom you feared was actually the doorway to your own soul. It is the moment when the external world stops shouting and the internal world starts speaking. You realize that for years, you haven't had an original thought. You've only had shared thoughts. You've only had curated reactions. But now, in the silence of the great disconnect, the voice in your head is yours again. It's rough, it's unpracticed, but it is authentic. You find yourself walking through the streets, looking people in the eye. You find yourself sitting on a park bench, watching the wind move through the trees. And for the first time in a decade, you aren't reaching for your pocket to film it for an audience that isn't there. The experience is enough. The moment is whole. You are learning to live in the present tense again, rather than the digital past or the algorithmic future. The rewiring is painful. It is the sound of a rusted machine coming back to life, but as the gears begin to turn, you realize that you were never broken. You were just occupied. The signal is gone. The noise is dead. And you are finally, beautifully awake. The brain is healing. The mind is returning. And the world is waiting for you to see it. For real this time. We have spent the last 30 years building a digital heaven, only to realize we've built a biological prison. The internet isn't just a library of information. It is a noise machine. It was designed to ensure that you are never, ever alone with your own thoughts. Because a mind that is thinking is a mind that isn't consuming. A mind that is silent is a mind the algorithm cannot track. If the signal died tonight, the greatest shock wouldn't be the loss of the GPS or the loss of the archives. It would be the sudden, violent return of your own voice. For the first time in your life, the digital ego, that polished, edited version of you that lives in the cloud, would be dead. And in its place, a stranger, you, the version of you that existed before the first like, the version of you that hasn't been monetized, categorized, or sold to the highest bidder by a data broker in a city you've never visited. As you sit here now, listening to these words, your brain is still pulsing with the expectation of the next hit. the next scroll, the next bit of data to validate your existence in a world that feels increasingly hollow. But look at the screen. Really look at it. It is a sheet of cold glass, lit by LEDs, designed to mimic the warmth of human connection, but providing none of the substance. It is a prosthetic for a soul that has forgotten how to breathe on its own. The satellites above us are aging. The cables under the ocean are fraying, gnawed on by deep-sea currents and the slow march of time and salt. The grid is a house of cards built on the assumption that the power will never, ever go out. But entropy is the only law of the universe that never fails. The Great Disconnect isn't a what-if scenario. It is an inevitability, whether it happens through a solar flare, a cyber war, or a simple act of personal rebellion. The signal will eventually fade, the servers will hum their last note, and the lights will flicker out, leaving us in the dark with nothing but our memories. And when it does, who will you be? Will you be a person, or will you be a series of disconnected data points? Drifting in a vacuum of your own making. So, I have a challenge for you. When this video ends, don't click the next one. Don't check your notifications. Don't look at the comments to see what other people think, as if their opinions are the only way to measure your own reality. Just put the device down, turn off the screen, and sit in the silence for exactly 60 seconds. Notice how quickly the anxiety rises in your chest. Notice how your hand reaches for the phone like a reflex, a twitch in a limb that is trying to find its master in the dark. Notice how the silence feels less like peace and more like a threat. That feeling? That is the sound of your brain realizing it's been modified. That is the phantom limb screaming for a connection that no longer exists. The internet hasn't just changed the world. It has changed what it means to be human. It has turned us into nodes in a network, rather than individuals in a community. And if the signal disappears, we might finally discover that we didn't just use the web. We were consumed by it. We were digested by the data, bit by bit, byte by byte, until there was nothing left but the interface. The servers are cooling. The satellites are drifting into the dark. The collective memory of our species is being wiped clean because we forgot how to write things down on anything other than a screen. You aren't waiting for the end of a video. You are waiting for the end of a version of yourself that you will never see again. The version of you that required a signal to feel important. The version of you that required a share to feel heard in the roar of the digital crowd. Look at the glass in your hand. It's not a window. It's a mirror. And soon, the lights are going out. The battery is at 1%. The connection is unstable. The data is corrupted beyond repair. Don't be afraid of the silence. Be afraid of the person you'll find waiting for you inside of it. The stranger in the mirror, the ghost in the room, the human that has been buried under a mountain of digital debris for far too long. The connection is lost. There is nothing left to see. No more updates, no more feeds, no more noise. The simulation is over. The screen is black. Now, for the first time in a long time, wake up, put the glass down, and look at the world. While it's still there, the silence is yours now. It is the only thing that is actually real. Own it. Live in it. Before the lights come back on.